Hello everyone, my name is Ig Promise and you're welcome to John Prem. So today we're going to be saying some of the most repeated UTME or JAM biology questions and explanatory answers. So if you're writing JAM this year and one of the subject combination you are going to be taking is biology, I believe this video is for you. So in the most repeated JAM biology questions, so these are questions probably you would likely see on the day of your examination. Though JAM cannot ask you like word for word, so they can change the context in which they ask this question. But if you are able to provide a good solution and know why the answers are actually the answers, I believe you are good to go in any biology examination. So we are going to be taking it series by series. So this is going to be series one, and also watch out for other series, which is the series two and other series. Yeah, so let's get into it. Some of the most repeated UTME biology or JAM biology questions and answers. So number one question we have here is a closely related organisms capable of interbreeding to produce fertile offspring are known as members of a dash A kingdom, B class, C family, and D species. So what is the answer? So depending on how JAM actually asks you this question, but you are going to note something which is called the interbreeding. So interbreeding is the key word to note here. So depending on how JAM asks you this question, just note the word interbreeding, and this question is actually coming from what we call classification. So the answer is actually D. So why is D the answer? Why is species the answer? So looking at this, it says there's actually a general formula for classification of organisms according to what is called the taxonomy rank, which is actually stated as the KPCOFGS, which is the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and the species. So this entails that the kingdom actually have highest rank, followed by the phylum, then before the class, and the species, which is actually the least. Yeah. So kingdom actually have the highest rank, like organisms that have widely divergent characteristics among themselves. So you can actually see, for example, your goat and ant. So both of them are actually from the same kingdom of the animalia. So they are from the same kingdom. That is to say, they are animals, but they cannot actually interbreed. Interbreed means like let me say reproduction. Yeah, they cannot actually reproduce within themselves. So that is probably why your kingdom cannot be the answers. And note that the species actually have closely related characteristics. So animals that actually have closely related characteristics that you can just see, okay, these two animals are very, very closely related. So you can see the example you actually gave, goat and ant. Goat and ant, both of them are actually animals, but if you look at both of them, you're able to see some kind of characteristics or the kind of things goats can do that ants cannot do. That's kind of, so those characteristics make them, like they are very, very, like they have widely characteristics apart. So that is why D is actually the answer. So let's see number two now. So a beaker of pond water containing few specimens of Euglena was actually placed in a dark room for 2 weeks. So at the end of this period, the specimen of Euglena were still alive because they were dashed. So this question is actually coming from classification also. So you note that when they will say classification is actually an organism that has both your animal and your plant characteristics or mode of feeding. So in place of if there isn't, okay, let's see the option now before we go to solution. So you say A, Uganda were able to still be, or they were still alive because they were A, able to carry out holozoic nutrition, B, able to carry out photosynthesis using carbon dioxide or carbon dioxide in the pond water, C, better adapted to life in darkness than life in light, and D, not overcrowded. So what is actually the answer? So the answer is actually A, which is able to carry out holozoic nutrition. So why is it A? holozoic nutrition is actually called, like the other name for holozoic nutrition is also called the heterotrophic nutrition. That is to say, organisms that can, like, let me say, they actually rely on other organisms for food. Yeah, so that is just the simple definition of holozoic kind of nutrition. So Euglena is actually a unicellular living organism that actually exhibits your plant and animal characteristics, that is or mode of feeding. So they can actually behave like plants to photosynthesize in the presence of sunlight. But if you see that question very well, they actually talked about dark room for 2 weeks. So there wasn't a sunlight. That is probably why they actually behave as an animal in the absence of sunlight. So in that question, since there wasn't sunlight, so Glenna actually behave as an animal. That is to say, so it not like they were not able to carry out the other mode of feeding, which is called the heterotrophic or the holozoic mode of nutrition. That is why A is the correct answer. So photosynthesis cannot occur in the presence of, like, in the absence of sunlight. So note that, yeah. So that is why um A is actually the answer. So let's see the second question now. It said, the cytoplasm of a cell is considered a very important component because it A. Regulate the amount of energy in the cell. B. Suspend all cells organelles. C. Is the outermost part of the cell. D. Is solely responsible for cell division. You say, why is the cytoplasm important, or what is the main function of the cytoplasm? Yeah, that is, so they can easily either ask you the main function or why is it actually important. So why is the cytoplasm actually important? So let's see why now. So the answer to the question is actually B, because they suspend all cells organelles. So why is B actually the answer? So cytoplasm is a media in which other cells organelles are actually suspended, just like the wind serves as a media through which planets, moles, and stars are actually suspended. Okay, cytoplasm acts, you know, in that like it actually has that same function in your cell. So this liquid actually provides these organelles from colliding and also for cell not to collapse. Yeah. So the cytoplasm may regulate the movement and arrangement of cells, organelles, or components, but certainly they do not actually involve in the amount of energy in the cells. Yeah. So that is why A is not correct. So you say A, regulate the amount of energy. No. So let's see. Okay. So yes, they serve as a media in which other cells are actually suspended. Okay, that is why B is correct. And why C is not correct is that the plasma membrane and not the cytoplasm is the outermost part of the cell. So the outermost part of the cell is actually the plasma membrane and not the cytoplasm. So the centrioles and not cytoplasm are actually responsible for cell division. So note this. So from this question, we're able to note other functions or other components of the cells, which is the centrioles being responsible for cell division, the plasma membrane, like, which is the outermost part of the cell. So note that. So let's go to the next question now, which is the question number 4. So in the diagram above, after an hour, the level of water in the tristophone will dash. So let's see the diagram very well. So in this diagram, they're asking you now, okay, after an hour, the water in the funnel will dash. A rise, B fall, B remain the same, D double. So this question is actually coming from diffusion. If you see something like this, or if you see a diagram like this, note that the question is actually coming from diffusion and osmosis. So they say diffusion is like osmosis, or this question is actually like going to osmosis because it actually like involve water molecule. So um looking at this now, so you're going to be seeing this diagram very well. So they're not asking you after, okay, let me say this solution is just say after an hour, the level of water in this solution or in the funnel will actually dash. So looking at the funnel, so you are going to be saying that there's a distilled water. So they have already underlined it for you. There's a distilled water as the surroundings. So in the funnel, they actually underline sugar solution and the membrane tied over the funnel. So we are looking at the sugar solution and distilled water now. So the sugar solution is actually in the funnel, and around the surroundings is distilled. Sorry, the sugar solution, yeah, the sugar solution is in the funnel, and around it is a distilled water. So after an hour, the funnel will actually like absorb water because it has a high concentration of sugar. So the funnel is going to absorb more water because see from higher solution or from lower solution to higher solution. So this sugar molecule is going to absorb more water in order to balance the solution. So for this question now, the answer is actually okay. After an hour, the level of water in the funnel will actually rise. So A is actually the correct answer to this question. Yeah. Yeah, see, osmosis actually expected to occur here. Yeah, so movement of water from less concentration distilled water to more concentration sugar molecules in order to neutralize and balance out the concentration of the sugar. Yeah, so that is why A is the answer. So you can also see other questions that are actually related to that for more details. Yeah. So let's move into the other question now, which is question number 5. Yeah. So it said in a plant cell, the role of a membrane is played by the dash. So in a plant cell, the role of a membrane, the membrane is actually found in your animals. Yeah. They are not animal cell. Yeah. So they're not asking you that which organelles or which part of this plant cell actually like perform the same function as the membrane in animals. So number one, we have your A, which is the nucleus, the cell wall, the cytoplasm, the mitochondria. So which is actually, or what is the right answer to this question now? So the right answer is actually B, which is the cell wall. So in plant cell, the role of a membrane is played by the cell wall. Yeah. So in animal, we have your cell wall. Sorry. In animal, you have your membrane, and in your plants, you have your cell wall. Yeah. So looking at the solutions, it said the membrane serve as a semi-permeable membrane that allows movement of water across, and between the two solutions. Yeah, the option nucleus is not actually the correct answer. It's a nucleus is an organelle, you know, like in the nucleus, it doesn't actually affect or involve the movement of water in and out of the cell. Yeah, so that is why nucleus cannot be the answer. So cytoplasm is not actually the answer. Yeah. So mitochondria doesn't actually have any stuff to do with movement of water or nutrients in and out of the cell. Note that mitochondria is actually responsible for respiration and anything called cell energy, like in the cell. Yeah. So that is why D is actually incorrect. So let's see the next question now, which is question number 6. So red blood cells were found to have burst open after being placed in distilled water for an hour. That phenomenon is known as what? Yeah. So when red blood cells are actually placed in a distilled water, so after some hours, you find out that that red blood cell absorbed more water and bursts. So that phenomenon is actually called A, plasmolysis, B, diffusion, C, hemolysis, and D, wetting. So what is the answer? So the answer is actually hemolysis. So why is hemolysis the answer here? So that phenomenon is called hemolysis. When the red blood cells are actually placed in distilled water, they swell and burst open due to osmosis. Note that that mechanism actually, exhibits osmosis. The move that's the like movement of water molecules around the cells. So that is to say, water naturally obey the law of osmosis, moving from less concentrated distilled water to more concentrated blood cell, therefore causing a cellular collapse. You see, this event sometimes occur in living beings. Yeah, so that is why the option plasmolysis is actually wrong. Yeah, plasmolysis is similar. It's a similar event which occur in plants and not animal cells. Yeah, so they already told you that plasmolysis also involve the shrinking or collapse of plant cells due to osmotic movement of water. So that phenomenon whereby the plant cell actually shrink or collapse is actually called the plasmolysis. So B is actually incorrect here. So diffusion is actually involved in the movement of gas and not liquid across, two regions of different concentration. So hemolysis is the answer. So D is actually incorrect. So wetting is actually the weakening of plant cells as a result of exposure to heat and loss of water. So you can see why hemolysis is actually the right answer to this question. So let's go to the next question now. So question number 7 actually says, the curvature movement of plants in response to the stimuli or stimulus of water is called A, hydrotropism, B, geotropism, C, phototropism, and D, thigmotropism. So what is actually the answer to this question now? So if you see something like this, so tell you hydrotropism or tropism. So what is actually tropism? So the word, okay, you already know this stuff called hydro, like water, yeah. So that is why hydro is actually the correct answer. So let's see why the rest options are not actually correct. So plants can move in response to gravity, light, water, and so on. So response here they tend to, over time respond to change in physical condition listed above. So the option, which is hydro, is actually correct. Response, of plants in availability of water. So B is incorrect because geotropism actually involves the response of plants to gravity, which is gravitational pulls. Yeah. So photo. Anyway, you see photo, just know that it is light. Yeah. So photo actually means availability of sunlight. D, which is actually not correct, too, which simply means thigmotropism, involve the response of plants to touch. Yeah. So we said, okay, from here you know that okay, how A is actually the right answer to this question. So let's move on to the next question, which is question number 8 now. So the overall reaction in glycolysis can be summarized or summarized as dash. So glycolysis solution, that is what this question is actually talking about. So if you, okay, the answer is actually A, which is, oh, sorry, the answer is actually B, which is so glycolysis also like involves a set of reactions that results in the breaking down of glucose into pyruvate acid, hydrogen ion, and ATP. Also note the let me say, okay, that is why A is, okay, A is actually incorrect because one molecule of glucose finally gives, you know, a net, that is, it just notes the molecules. Yeah, notes the molecules. So the molecules actually matters a lot. So sometimes they can give you ATP. If glucose actually break down to give you pyruvate acid, hydrogen ion, and ATP. But the molecule of hydrogen to ATP is actually 4:2. So note it that sometimes they can just give you pyruvate acid, hydrogen ion, and ATP, but that's the molecule actually attached. Yeah, so actually differentiate it. So 4:2 actually differentiate it. That's why B is actually the correct answer. Yeah, B is actually correct. So one molecule of glucose summarily yield 2 molecules of pyruvate acid, 4 molecules of hydrogen ions, and 2 ATP. Yeah. So the final product of glycolysis does not yield ADP. ATP, which actually means the adenosine triphosphate, and the ADP, which is actually means the adenosine diphosphate. So the final product of glycolysis does not yield ADP. Yeah, so that is why C is actually wrong or incorrect. So D is actually incorrect too, because the final product of glycolysis does not actually yield ADP too. Yeah. So let's move on to the next question, which is the question number 9. Yeah. See it? The longest bone in the body is dash. So the longest bone in the body. So you are going to be saying this question often. So just note this question. If you don't know this question now, if you don't know the answer, so it's very important you note it, because you might just say this question. It said A, the humerus, B, the femur, the scapula, the tibia. So what is the answer? The answer is actually the femur. Yeah, the femur is actually the longest bone in the body. Yeah. So the human skeleton is actually made up of different, bones of different size and shape, composed together by joints. Yeah. So now the longest bone in the body should be the tail bone, which runs from the hip to the knee. Yeah. So the longest bone actually runs from the hip to the knee, while the shortest bone is actually called the stips, and it can actually be found in your middle ear. So A is actually incorrect because the humerus runs from your shoulder to your elbow. Yeah. So B is actually correct, which is the femur. The femur actually runs from your hip, yeah, through the thing, of the knee. Like, it actually runs from your hip to your knee. It's also known as your thin bone. Yeah, the scapula is actually the shortest. Yeah, in this option that they actually gave you guys. And D is not the answer, because the tibia actually runs from your neck to your ankle. The ankle, which also means your foot. So I believe you've got value from this video. Okay, do watch out for this second series, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. See you guys.